A strange fruit is rotting, hanging low, and falling far from its tree. While they trade meaning for happiness, the mask slips. Nothing is real. Nothing really matters. Nothingness is power, escaping every hour in a pill, tinctures and potions. If they could only face reality. But how can one face reality when they know it not? Trading truth for pleasure, knowledge for ignorance. A comatose youth addicted to angst and orgasm. A shattered innocence opens up the chasm. Take your fill. Unbridled hedonism, malignant self-worship in the guise of liberty. A generation too big for the playpen, but still too small to heed the call. Its parents have left home, as the latchkey learns on their own. Whether the general public has noticed or not, and what we once knew as tradition, culture, and family is being transformed at a rapid pace. A massive dark cloud has been stretching itself over society for decades now. A type of noir, a new age noir, is upon us, where the themes of the day lean towards a darkness and despair, or some exaggerated mania grounded in arrogance and elitism. The space in between is shrinking as these polar extremes deepen. The youth have fully accepted and internalized the ways of this massive dark cloud. Duality has fully set in, and no one seems to know who they are anymore, outside of what popular culture provides them, of course. And media culture has officially claimed the role of parent. While earthly parents are too busy neglecting their children, controlling or swallowing them, or simply giving them up to society altogether. We are aware that this type of darkness is generational and has been in a state of growth since about 1953, to be precise. This societal and spiritual darkness is nothing new, but it is weighty and more powerful than ever. But there seems to be a specific type of cloudiness that has been taking a passenger seat driver role socially. A parasitical angst that has been feeding on the heartstrings of youth culture. And today, we see it for all its false light and intrigue. It's in the movies, it's in the news, it's in your headphones and haunts every scroll feed, as if it feeds on society with the bloodlust of a demon, a Nosferatu, a spirit, a worldview, a constructed identity, whatever you wish to call it. We are seeing a new wave of this movement in culture today like never before. Nihilism. What is nihilism? A philosophical concept coined by German thinker Friedrich Nietzsche. Generally, nihilism is the rejection of all religious and moral principles, and meaning of life itself. Here, morality is subjective, even reality can be considered subjective to a nihilist. Life is what you want it to be. You are your own God. In fact, to the nihilist, God is dead or useless, silly, and pointless to consider as a thing. The nihilist believes at the end of the day, nothing really matters. I mean, we're all going to die anyway, right? How many times have you heard that in your life? A nihilist believes to live is to be liberated without bound. Love is pain and pain is love.
The universe is a cruel, uncaring void. The key to being happy isn't the search for meaning. It's to just keep yourself busy with unimportant nonsense, and eventually you'll be dead.
Existence is a prison, a dark sort of game, or a fabricated simulation designed by some extraterrestrial entity out there in the supposed deep black void.
All right, God, is it? It's time for some answers. Who are we?
Here's the bad news. You're video game characters. You were designed by computer geeks in cubicles to run around and be controlled by other computer geeks in their bedrooms.
We knew that, Birkenstocks. Yeah, explain to us the meaning of life.
Okay, those computer geeks who control you, thing is, they're part of a video game too. You see, the planet Earth is my most immersive, detailed video game yet, and I play it 24 hours a day. It's great. You can get out of your car, have a family. I even put in a complete and wholly consistent fossil record for the nerds. So, the Simpsons game, your game, is really nothing but a mini game inside my Earth game, if you think about it.
So, not only are we not real, we're characters inside a mini-game inside another game. And the people playing us right now are the characters inside the big game that you're playing.
Well, you're not inside just any game. The planet Earth got a score of 96 on Metacritic.
Huh? God, there is one thing. Do you ever wonder if you're a character in a video game?
That's just dumb. I mean, stop being dumb.
Wow! Daddy, someone's looking at me!
It's very likely you know many people who subscribe to this philosophical perspective of life. Nihilists tend to have self-absorbed, destructive impulses and complexes, usually causing destruction of themselves, those around them, or society as a whole in the long term, directly or indirectly. With nihilism, you will find an atheistic or secular worldview based on the materialism of Kant and Darwin, the skepticism of Hegel and Schopenhauer, and the cold vein of Machiavelli. Interestingly, and beneath our noses, this dark cloud known as nihilism is covertly rising back to the surface of society and has been systematically injected into the populace via mass network and social media, especially the music industry, news broadcasting, and Hollywood. A nihilistic culture has now presented itself as the norm today. So normal, in fact, average people fail to even notice it. Consciences have been seared beyond repair. Endless fear porn and trauma has leveled the public to a lukewarm numbness. Moral values have been bent into an L shape, crooked and passive-aggressive, vengeful and suppressing emotional rage. Mixed with drug potions and flesh addictions, popular culture within society has rendered the masses tacit, yet corrupt, confused and insecure, yet all at the same time valiant and cavalier. Double-minded and double-binded. Nihilism, the new unknown. For us to understand nihilism, we must first recognize that its origin is found in existentialism, a materialist's angst and obsession with the meaning of a life that apparently has no author. Then, and possibly most importantly, we must refer to the social movement that breeds nihilism, and that is postmodernism. In short, postmodernism is a reactionary movement to modernism, which is based in Western traditions and most notably a Judeo-Christian worldview. Postmodernism was formed as a socio-cultural movement during the Enlightenment era, when men like Francis Bacon, Newton, and Descartes began to question the stiff and binary truths of the modern era and wanted to engage with science, the esoteric, and nature instead of the creator God and its moral absolutism. Similar to the Reformation's reaction to crooked Catholicism of the monarchy, the Enlightenment era wanted to change the Western traditions of truth. This resulted in postmodernism, a spunky literary movement, an anti-art wave in broad terms, but at its crux, the postmodernist aims to not only redefine culture and tradition, but remove the entire concept of absolute truth, form, standards, and natural order altogether. By focusing on logic, reason, and the individual, postmodernist thinkers took the works of Bacon, Descartes, and Newton to an all-new realm and configuration, namely figures like Immanuel Kant, to Martin Heidegger, and Foucault, and of course the infamous deconstructionist Derrida. And these individuals ushered in what we know now today as the postmodern worldview, an anti-truth, anti-distinction, and individualism, and anti-God philosophy that stands as the foundation of most neoliberalism in academia throughout the earth. Here we find the concept of logic, reason, and truth completely disregarded as viable goals for humanity. Michel Foucault himself states as, quote, "Reason is the ultimate language of madness. Instead, the focus becomes arbitrary feelings, emotion, and subjectivity over objectivity and absolutes, community and collectivism over individualistic nation-states. Our modern-day identity politics culture is a perfect example of this, since it is in fact a postmodern movement. Here you will find pro-socialism and communism, equality of outcome proponents, egalitarianism, diversity, inclusion, representation, and plenty more new-speak terms to fill your goblet. Overall, within postmodernism, there is a consensus on secular humanism as a belief system, atheism and agnosticism as well. To put it simple, postmodernism is an intellectual reinterpretation of reality and epistemology. Truth is a myth, and reason is just a white male construct. Fascinating. What does this have to do with nihilism? Well, nihilism is a byproduct of the postmodernist worldview. Once you remove reason, meaning, and truth, morality, and especially God, what else is there to believe in? Nothingness. Nihilism can be generally described in three specific forms: moral, spiritual, and intellectual nihilism. No absolute morality, no absolute God, no absolute truth. In other words, anything is up for debate. Your truth is your truth, and my truth is my truth. No one is right, no one is wrong. Since there's no intrinsic point to anything, do what you want, how you want, or simply do nothing at all.
Fans gonna be like, damn, bro, I wake up at like 2. I smoke, I eat, I get on my phone for like 3 hours, watch TV, Amazon Prime. My nigga, I'm set right now, so I don't really do shit. I might just be chilling. That's the beauty of this shit.
A life of loose pleasure-seeking and risk-taking adventure can result from this nihilistic perspective, but also a life of escapism, isolation, depression, and anguish is another result that far too often occurs. Especially in our modern youth culture, what seems to coincide with this perspective of nihilism is a required presence of narcissism and self-absorption. And as we can see, our popular culture today has no shortage of malignant narcissism within all of its messages and imagery. This movement of generalized narcissism is very present in pretty much everything we are given. In fact, narcissism has arguably become a shared cultural value. They sell us this false sense of royalty and social dominion, as if we all are to aspire to be kings and queens, yet they never mention the majority inherently will be peasants. I mean, nothing matters anyway, right? Might as well love death and destruction. What's the point in changing? How about this for double-minded? A postmodern neoliberal culture that promotes reckless capitalism, an obsession with cash and personal wealth, yet feeds off a socialist government program system and sets unrealistic standards for millions of eager fans and followers via social media. Look at me, look at us, we made it. The majority of you won't, but keep watching. It must take a massive lack of empathy to arrogantly wave fresh-cut steaks in front of chained rabid dogs. Indeed, there is no shortage of narcissism and nihilism within our pop culture and mass society today. But before we present how nihilism has been ingrained into our culture, it is important to detail two specific levels of nihilism. This is the concept of normative nihilism and deep nihilism. Normative nihilism can be considered as a macro sense of nihilistic tendencies, the generalized behaviors that come with the lack of care, empathy, and concern for oneself, others, and their society as a whole. We see normative nihilism everywhere. You hear about it everywhere. Yet most people have no idea these tendencies and behaviors are forms of nihilism. Basically, today it is pretty normal to not care about your society, your community, and even yourself, or only caring about yourself and no one else. This is not only rooted in generalized narcissism, but it is accompanied by nihilistic perspectives. And the hypothesis here is that these concepts are being indoctrinated into our society and mainly our youth via mainstream media, social media, and mass entertainment. The other level of nihilism is one that is more severe, typically a micro sense of nihilistic tendencies. It is more isolated in our culture, yet it is extremely debilitating and is growing in number thanks to many music artists and nihilistic social media platforms. That is deep nihilism. Basically, with deep nihilism, we get the exaggerated and extreme end of normative nihilism. Instead of depression, we go further to suicidal ideation. Or instead of promiscuity, one turns to actually selling one's body. Instead of homosexuality, one goes deeper into pansexuality, bestiality, or transhumanism and gender dysphoria. This spectrum of nihilism is increased by drug use and media indoctrination. Currently, hip-hop and pop culture are displaying symptoms of a normalized, nihilistic, and narcissistic socio-mental disorder. And these behaviors within the industries are being found within the general audience. Is our postmodern pop culture rendering mass society mentally ill? Hence our next topic, and the result of this dark cloud of nihilistic tendencies that has systematically been taking over pop culture. Nihilist aestheticism. Social media and the internet have unfortunately brought with it blind spots and wormholes amongst its obvious positive attributes and contributions to human communication. Especially for the younger, more impressionable, and lesser together youth populations. What we have discovered is a new youth noir of dark-themed, abnormal, melancholic nihilism that is spreading across the earth at rapid speed. Spreading this dark cloud of nothingness to the emerging generations. Stony, hypersexual, and hyper-emotional existential dread, attention, and drug-addicted style actors and actresses. Kids too sad to care, too cool for public interaction. Anxiety-ridden neuroticism at a level you would find in mid-40-year-old psych patients. Nihilism has become a new youth trend and perspective of virtue. Today, wearing your emotions on your sleeve is analogous to wearing a badge of honor. Sad boys and sad girls getting high because, well, life. Memes and drug scenes keep their eyes in focus. Sex and masturbation is used as a medicine via 24/7 internet porn slot machines in their pockets. Too young, moving too fast, doing too much too soon. We find evidence of a deep-seated need for acceptance, a longing for belonging, this coarse obsession with being alone. A nagging codependence seems to paint this generation blue, in which, and of course, we find the cause and culprit: bad parenting, or better, the non-parenting parent technique. Leave the kids to the internet to raise and rear, or commandeer. There also seems to be a reoccurring theme of sexual, emotional, and physical abuse rampant throughout those endorsing this nihilist aestheticism. Nihilism and experienced abuse go hand in hand. This is exactly how problem children are born, resulting in half-baked jellyfish begging for anything to simply acknowledge their existence, and willing to do almost anything to receive that acknowledgement. Hence the repetitive themes of existentialism, anxiety, depression, self-harm, and pout-faced angst. Followed by this false sense of authenticity, a, hey, let's be weird for the simple sake of being weird. Since being different gets you noticed, and being noticed reminds you that you still exist. Because as a nihilist, you need to be constantly reminded that you do. But then one notices that being weird isn't so different when, well, everyone else is getting weird as well. This odd presence of nonconformist conformity, a cognitive dissonance of the identity. We will all be different together, but the same separately. Okay. And it isn't like this has not always been going on, generation to generation. But the speed at which it is transforming and morphing today, in 2018, is not merely historical, but completely unheard of, and disturbingly extreme in its mannerisms and symptomatic behaviors. It is apparent that, as of late, there has been a massive influx of drug production and availability. I mean, the promotion of drugs and its abuse is everywhere. Cross that with the new and improved high-speed internet and instantaneous emotional orgasms via social media. Well, new drugs, new technology, able bodies that think life is meaningless with nothing to really live for. Well, you get nihilist aestheticism. Two of the largest contributors to this movement are the social media platforms Tumblr and WorldStar.com. Most likely, the best example of this nihilist aesthetic is the late artist XXXTentacion, a cult hero and by some even labeled legend. He embodied all the ideals of normative and deep nihilism. And interestingly, he, like the nihilist aesthetic itself, received a start on the postmodern social platform, Tumblr. From a sad, bad, and mad neurotic culture to incest play and twisted youth innuendo, Tumblr provides a location for nihilism to breed and create entire subgroups of malignant narcissism, identity dysphoria, and deep nihilism. To add, the notorious SJW political movement, transgender rights, and gender fluidity and non-conforming groups were all kickstarted via Tumblr. Mind you, the average age on this site ranges between 16 and 29. Arguably the most influential demographic the future is concerned with. We also see the bent and nihilistic culture of Tumblr leaking directly into all major social media platforms, like Instagram and SoundCloud, especially YouTube. Just take a short gander at the comment sections, and you will see a common self-deprecating culture that only aims to inflict as much pain and anguish as possible. Typically today, this is humanized into the concept called trolling. Encouraging and joking about suicide has become a passive saying amongst peers, or just everything in the world that ever mattered spun down to a simple sexual act, a dollar amount, or genital reference. Base level, low frequency, bottom feeder-like behavior is the standard for the average 16 to 30-year-old today. A twisted bunch to say the least. Furthermore, these subgroups and social media movements are shaping the future by shaping the new perspective of pop culture, literally transforming the Western traditions of modernity into something else. And this new wave of transformation is happening via the youth. The children are being used to steer the political, social, and moral direction of mankind. Horus, the conquering child of Crowley, has been unleashed. The new age noir youth culture of the 21st century has now arrived. And nihilism is a clear theme that is becoming a part of youth culture identity. A culture identity that is preoccupied with concepts of death and violence, the exploitation of drugs and other people's bodies, an obsession with gluttony, decadence, and sadomasochism, a driving hunger harvested by a bottomless stomach overcome by rage, sadness, and mania, all at the same time. A mass identity crisis facilitated and administered via the World Wide Web. As we watch illness romanticized amidst an antisocial cyber youth, we all bear witness to the dark corners of post-pubescent consciousness, a generation to outmuck all generations, a postmodern day cultural nihilist aestheticism.